The desert wind carried the sound of distant thunder across the canyon, but Marcus knew better. That wasn't thunder. It was the desperate cry of something fighting for its life. He'd been tracking wild mustangs in the Nevada highlands for 20 years, documenting their migration patterns and protecting their dwindling habitat, but nothing had prepared him for what he was about to discover on that scorching August afternoon. Marcus had lost everything 3 years ago. His daughter, Emma, had been just 16 when the accident took her. She'd loved these wild horses more than anything in the world, spending countless weekends riding alongside her father through these very canyons. After her death, Marcus had retreated into himself, going through the motions of his conservation work but feeling nothing. His wife had left, unable to bear his emotional absence, and he'd accepted the loneliness as penance for somehow failing to protect their only child. But today, something pulled him forward with an urgency he hadn't felt in years. The sound grew louder as he climbed over the rocky outcrop, and then he saw him. A magnificent wild stallion, his coat the color of burnished copper, was tangled in a maze of rusted barbed wire that had collapsed from an abandoned fence line. The horse thrashed violently, his eyes rolling white with terror, each movement embedding the razor-sharp barbs deeper into his flesh. Blood streamed down his legs and chest, painting the dusty ground crimson. Marcus's heart clenched. The stallion was young, perhaps 4 years old, in his prime. Without help, he would die here, slowly torn apart by his own panic. Marcus approached slowly, speaking in low, steady tones. The same voice he'd used with Emma when she'd been frightened as a little girl. The stallion fixed him with wild, desperate eyes, nostrils flaring. Every instinct in the animal screamed danger, but exhaustion was beginning to take its toll. Marcus could see the horse was weakening, his struggles becoming less frantic but more dangerous as he risked severing an artery. Time was running out. Marcus radioed for help, but the nearest veterinarian was 2 hours away, and the nearest town even farther. He knew what he had to do, even if it terrified him. He would have to free this magnificent creature himself, alone, with nothing but wire cutters and faith. For the next hour, Marcus worked with painstaking care, snipping away at the wire strand by strand while dodging the stallion's instinctive kicks. Several times, hooves connected with his ribs, his shoulder, leaving bruises that would purple and ache for weeks. But Marcus pressed on, murmuring constantly, telling the horse about Emma, about how she would have loved him, about how she'd always believed these wild spirits deserved their freedom. Sweat poured down his face in the relentless heat. His hands bled from where the wire had cut him. But slowly, impossibly, the stallion began to calm. Those wild eyes softened, watching Marcus with what almost seemed like understanding. When the last strand finally fell away, Marcus stumbled backward, giving the horse room to stand. The stallion remained still for a long moment, sides heaving, legs trembling. Marcus expected him to bolt, to disappear into the canyon and never look back. That's what wild horses did. That's what made them wild. But instead, something extraordinary happened. The stallion took a tentative step forward, then another, closing the distance between them. Marcus held his breath, not daring to move. The great horse lowered his head and gently, deliberately, pressed his muzzle against Marcus's chest, right over his heart. The touch was tender, impossibly gentle for such a powerful creature. Marcus felt something crack open inside him. A dam he'd built brick by brick over 3 years of grief and guilt. Tears streamed down his weathered face as he carefully raised his hand and placed it on the stallion's neck. The horse didn't flinch, didn't pull away. Instead, he leaned into the touch, breathing softly against Marcus's shoulder. In that moment, Marcus understood. This wasn't gratitude. This was recognition. This wild, wounded creature understood his pain because it mirrored his own. They'd both been trapped, both been bleeding, both been desperate for freedom from suffering. And somehow, in saving the stallion, Marcus had freed something in himself. They stood together as the sun began its descent, painting the canyon in shades of gold and amber. Finally, the stallion stepped back, tossed his magnificent head, and with a sound that was almost joyful, galloped away toward the horizon where his herd waited. Marcus watched until he disappeared into the distance, a smile breaking across his face for the first time in 3 years. That night, Marcus called his ex-wife. They talked for hours. The next week, he started volunteering at a therapeutic writing center, working with children who'd lost parents, siblings, friends. He began to understand that Emma's love for these wild horses had been about more than the animals themselves. It had been about connection, about the moments when two souls recognize each other's wounds and choose compassion over fear. Sometimes salvation arrives on four hooves when we least expect it. Sometimes we save something wild, only to discover it's been saving us all along. And sometimes the greatest gift we can give or receive is simply the courage to stay present in someone else's pain, to work patiently at the barbs that bind us until at last we're both free. If this story touched something in you, if you've ever felt trapped by grief or loss, remember that freedom is possible. Reach out. Connect. Be brave enough to let someone help untangle your pain. And if you believe in second chances and the healing power of compassion, share this story with someone who needs to hear it today. Because sometimes one moment of kindness can change everything.